When a fire traps Karen, a racist white woman, in her home, it's Kevin, a black firefighter, who risks everything to save her. Instead of gratitude, Karen sues the fire department for negligence. As the case unfolds, Kevin must confront not only the flames, but also the prejudices of a community divided. Can he emerge as a hero, or will Karen's entitlement extinguish his bravery? Before we dive into this incredible story, comment below where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy the story. Now let's get started. The shrill sirens echoed through the affluent neighborhood as Kevin and his fellow firefighters raced toward the scene. Thick, black smoke billowed into the sky, a dark warning of the chaos unfolding within the luxurious home. Kevin, a dedicated fireman with years of experience, felt a surge of adrenaline as they parked the fire truck and suited up. "Let's move," his captain barked, urgency in his voice. The team hurried toward the entrance, the heat radiating from the flames licking at their faces. As they approached, Kevin could hear frantic screams coming from inside the house. Without hesitation, he grabbed the nearest hose and prepared to enter. "Stay close," he shouted to his partner, a rookie named Dave, who looked nervous but determined. Pushing through the door, they were immediately enveloped by smoke. Visibility was almost zero, and the roar of the flames drowned out everything else. Kevin felt a familiar sense of duty wash over him. Lives were at stake, and he had to act. "Call out," Kevin yelled, his voice hoarse from the smoke. "Anyone inside, make yourself known." The response came, a woman's voice, muffled and terrified. "Help! I'm in the living room." "Stay where you are," Kevin shouted back, and he and Dave made their way toward the sound of her voice. The room was engulfed in flames, furniture ablaze, but Kevin could see a figure huddled in the corner. "Get down," he commanded, rushing forward and reaching for the woman, whose face was streaked with soot. As he approached, he recognized her, Karen, the wealthy woman from the neighborhood who had openly expressed disdain for him and his colleagues on several occasions. She had been known for her racist comments, her privileged position making her feel untouchable. "Kevin," she gasped, fear evident in her eyes. You're here?" "Hold on." He pulled her to her feet, wrapping an arm around her waist. "We need to get out now." Together they navigated the smoke-filled room, Kevin's instincts guiding them through the chaos. As they stumbled outside into the night air, they collapsed onto the grass, coughing and gasping for breath. "Thank you," Karen stammered, still shaking. Kevin barely registered her words, his focus solely on the next task at hand. The fire raged behind them, and the sirens continued to blare as more firefighters arrived. Kevin felt the weight of the situation, knowing he had saved a life despite her past behavior toward him. But the relief was short-lived. Karen's expression shifted as she took a step back, a look of disdain crossing her face as she scrutinized him. "What the hell are you doing here?" she snapped, her tone sharp. "I didn't ask for you to save me." Kevin's heart sank. Even in the face of death, her racism resurfaced. "You were trapped. I did what I had to do." Karen turned her back, and Kevin felt a mix of anger and disbelief wash over him. He had risked his life for someone who had never shown him the slightest respect. The days that followed the fire were filled with media coverage, and the story quickly spread throughout the community. Kevin's act of bravery was recognized, with news outlets hailing him as a hero. But behind the scenes, Karen was far from grateful. She was furious, and her anger turned to action. In the hospital, recovering from smoke inhalation, Karen concocted a plan. She would sue the fire department for emotional distress, claiming Kevin's rescue had traumatized her. The audacity of it all left Kevin shaking his head in disbelief as he watched the news report. "Karen has always been a piece of work," one of his colleagues commented, shaking his head. "She's using this as a way to get attention." At the fire station, Kevin struggled with the emotional toll. His colleagues rallied around him, praising his bravery and insisting he did the right thing. But he couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. How could someone be so ungrateful? As the lawsuit gained traction, Karen's claims were reported widely, painting her as a victim. Kevin found himself at the center of a media storm, and he hated every moment of it. "Don't let it get to you, man," Dave said one day while they were cleaning equipment. "You did what you were trained to do. That's what matters." "Yeah, but the media doesn't see it that way," Kevin replied, frustration boiling over. They only care about the drama. Karen's attorney called for a press conference, and the entire fire department was thrust into the spotlight. Kevin watched as Karen spoke, her voice filled with indignation. "I never wanted to be saved by someone like him," she exclaimed. "I've suffered greatly since that day, and I believe I deserve compensation for the emotional trauma." Kevin's blood boiled. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. The woman who had been trapped in her own home, someone he had saved, was now accusing him of causing her distress. "Kevin, it's going to be okay," his captain assured him later that day. "We're going to support you through this. Just focus on your job." But as the days turned into weeks, the weight of the situation grew heavier. Kevin began to doubt himself, questioning his place in the community. The whispers of racism echoed in his ears, and he wondered if he would ever be viewed as more than just a color. The day of the court hearing arrived, and the atmosphere was tense. The courtroom was packed with media, curious spectators, and firefighters who had come to support Kevin. As he walked in, he felt a mix of anxiety and determination. He had done nothing wrong, and he refused to be painted as the villain. Karen sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by her lawyer, a smug-looking man who glanced at Kevin with disdain. Kevin took a deep breath and steadied himself. He had come too far to let her tear him down now. The judge entered the room, and everyone stood as she took her seat. The proceedings began, with Karen's lawyer outlining her claims of emotional distress and trauma. "Miss Thompson, can you explain to the court how the actions of Mr. Johnson have affected your life?" the lawyer asked, turning toward Karen. Karen placed a hand on her chest, feigning distress. "I have been unable to sleep. The nightmares haunt me every night. I didn't ask for him to save me. I was terrified, and it was because of him that I was even in that situation." Kevin felt a fire ignite within him. He wanted to stand up and shout, but he remained seated, determined to hear her out. "Your Honor, if I may," Kevin's lawyer interjected, rising to his feet. "What my client did was in line with his duties as a firefighter. He acted quickly to save a life, which should be commended, not punished." "Is it true, Miss Thompson, that you had expressed racist sentiments toward Mr. Johnson before the fire?" the lawyer pressed. Karen's face flushed with anger. "That's irrelevant. I'm the victim here." The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as Kevin's lawyer laid out their case. He called on witnesses, including Kevin's fellow firefighters and community members who spoke of Kevin's character and bravery. One firefighter stood up, recalling the moment Kevin risked his life. Kevin didn't hesitate for a second. He saved her life when others would have given up. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Kevin was called to the stand. As he took a deep breath and faced the court, he felt a sense of purpose. "Mr. Johnson," the lawyer began, "can you tell the court your side of the story?" "I didn't think about anything other than saving her," Kevin replied, his voice steady. "I didn't care who she was or what she thought of me. I was trained to save lives, and that's what I did." Karen glared at him, her expression filled with resentment. "Do you think you did the right thing?" she shot back. "You think you're a hero?" "I didn't do it for recognition," Kevin said, holding her gaze. "I did it because it was my job. If you had been in my position, I hope you would have done the same, regardless of who was trapped inside that house." The courtroom was electric with tension. As Kevin stood on the witness stand, he could feel the eyes of the jury scrutinizing him, each member trying to gauge the truth behind the facade of accusations. Karen sat across the room, her arms crossed and her expression hardened, as if she was daring him to defend himself. "Mr. Johnson," Karen's lawyer continued, "you've been hailed as a hero by the media. But tell us, what do you really think about Miss Thompson?" Kevin's heart raced. He had expected the question but was unsure how to answer without letting his emotions get the better of him. "I believe every life is valuable," he said finally, his voice steady. "When I entered that house, I didn't think about race. I thought about saving a person. I didn't want her to die." "Is that so?" the lawyer challenged, leaning forward as if trying to intimidate him. "But isn't it true that you've had personal interactions with Miss Thompson before the fire? Isn't it true that she has openly expressed racist sentiments about you and your colleagues?" Kevin clenched his jaw. "Yes, she has said things I found offensive, but that didn't matter when her life was at risk." So you're saying that your personal feelings didn't affect your ability to save her? Exactly. Then let's consider the fact that after you rescued her, she was traumatized and in shock, the lawyer pressed. Is it possible that your presence was more distressing than helpful? The room grew silent as the jury shifted uncomfortably. Kevin took a deep breath, trying to remain composed. I understand that she may have been scared after the fire, but I acted to save her. That was my job. Karen's lawyer attempted to continue hammering Kevin with questions, but Kevin held his ground. He could feel the support of his fellow firefighters in the audience, their silent encouragement pushing him to stay strong. Finally, Karen's lawyer finished and took a seat. Kevin's lawyer rose, a sense of calm radiating from him. Kevin, he began, what happened after the fire when you encountered Miss Thompson outside? Kevin recalled the moment vividly. She was angry. Instead of expressing gratitude, she lashed out at me, telling me I had no business saving her. Is that the typical response of someone grateful for their life? His lawyer asked, allowing the jury to absorb Kevin's words. Not at all, Kevin replied, frustration creeping into his voice. She didn't just disregard my actions. She seemed to blame me for her predicament. Thank you, Kevin, his lawyer said, stepping back. Next, Karen was called back to the stand. The tension in the air thickened as she approached. Kevin could see the storm brewing behind her eyes, her disdain for him palpable. Miss Thompson, the lawyer began, after the incident, did you make any statements to the press regarding your feelings about Mr. Johnson's rescue? Yes, I did, Karen replied, her voice sharp. I told them that I never wanted to be saved by a black man. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Kevin's heart sank, anger mixing with disbelief. Do you stand by that statement? The lawyer pressed. Yes, I do, she affirmed defiantly, her chin held high. I was traumatized and I didn't want his help. Is it fair to say that your opinion of Mr. Johnson influenced your feelings after the incident? The lawyer probed. Karen hesitated, the bravado slipping slightly. No, I was just scared. Isn't it true that your racism has colored your judgment? That your fear was misplaced and ultimately irrational? Objection, Karen's lawyer shouted, but the judge waved him off, clearly intrigued by the line of questioning. Karen's facade cracked under pressure, her defiance faltering. I was scared, she admitted reluctantly, but it doesn't matter. I still felt violated. Violated? Kevin echoed incredulously. You were saved. You were given a second chance at life. Karen's eyes blazed with indignation. You wouldn't understand. Try me, Kevin shot back, the tension rising. You think your privilege protects you from accountability? You are a racist, and that's not going to change just because you found yourself in danger. The judge's gavel rang out sharply. Order. This is a courtroom, not a shouting match. But the damage was done. The jury had witnessed the true nature of Karen's character, and Kevin could sense the shift in their attitudes. As the days dragged on, the tension in the courtroom grew thicker. Every hearing feeling like a test of endurance for both Kevin and Karen. Each day brought fresh revelations and reminders of their starkly different worlds. But as the trial neared its conclusion, a sense of inevitability hung in the air. Finally, the day of closing arguments arrived. Kevin took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. He had done everything he could to defend himself and his honor. Now it was up to the jury to decide. Karen's lawyer was the first to speak, his words filled with dramatic flair. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client is a victim. She faced unimaginable terror, and now she has to live with the consequences of being rescued by someone who openly represents a community she feels threatened by. Her emotional distress is real, and it deserves your sympathy. Kevin clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. It was clear that Karen's lawyer was playing the race card, twisting the narrative to portray her as a victim of Kevin's very existence. As he sat there, he recalled his childhood dreams of being a firefighter, how he had always wanted to help people regardless of who they were. I can't let this stand, he thought, determination fueling him. His lawyer rose next, his voice calm yet firm. Kevin Johnson is a hero who risked his life to save another. Despite the prejudices and personal attacks he faces, he acted selflessly. This case is not just about one woman's fear. It's about recognizing the truth that transcends race. Kevin's actions that day were heroic, and he deserves your respect. The jury listened intently, their expressions serious. Kevin felt a wave of hope wash over him. Perhaps justice would prevail. As the trial concluded, the judge instructed the jury to deliberate. The atmosphere in the courtroom was charged with anticipation. Kevin's heart raced as he waited, unsure of what the outcome would be. Hours passed and the jury finally returned. The judge's gavel struck sharply, commanding silence as everyone turned to face the jury foreperson. "We, the jury, find in favor of the defendant, Kevin Johnson," she announced. Cheers erupted in the gallery, but Kevin remained still, processing the news. The judge raised her hand for silence. "I must say, Miss Thompson, your actions have not only jeopardized your reputation, but have also revealed a side of you that is unacceptable in our society. You were saved, and instead of showing gratitude, you chose to lash out in a display of ignorance and prejudice." Karen's face turned crimson as she glared at the judge, her anger boiling over. "This court finds your behavior appalling," the judge continued. "Kevin Johnson acted bravely, and he will be celebrated as a hero for his actions. This case is closed." As the days dragged on, the tension in the courtroom grew thicker, every hearing feeling like a test of endurance for both Kevin and Karen. Each day brought fresh revelations and reminders of their starkly different worlds. But as the trial neared its conclusion, a sense of inevitability hung in the air. Finally, the day of closing arguments arrived. Kevin took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. He had done everything he could to defend himself and his honor. Now it was up to the jury to decide. Karen's lawyer was the first to speak, his words filled with dramatic flair. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client is a victim. She faced unimaginable terror, and now she has to live with the consequences of being rescued by someone who openly represents a community she feels threatened by. Her emotional distress is real, and it deserves your sympathy." Kevin clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. It was clear that Karen's lawyer was playing the race card, twisting the narrative to portray her as a victim of Kevin's very existence. As he sat there, he recalled his childhood dreams of being a firefighter, how he had always wanted to help people regardless of who they were. "I can't let this stand," he thought, determination fueling him. His lawyer rose next, his voice calm yet firm. "Kevin Johnson is a hero who risked his life to save another. Despite the prejudices and personal attacks he faces, he acted selflessly. This case is not just about one woman's fear, it's about recognizing the truth that transcends race. Kevin's actions that day were heroic, and he deserves your respect." The jury listened intently, their expressions serious. Kevin felt a wave of hope wash over him. Perhaps justice would prevail. As the trial concluded, the judge instructed the jury to deliberate. The atmosphere in the courtroom was charged with anticipation. Kevin's heart raced as he waited, unsure of what the outcome would be. Hours passed, and the jury finally returned. The judge's gavel struck sharply, commanding silence as everyone turned to face the jury foreperson. "We, the jury, find in favor of the defendant, Kevin Johnson," she announced. Cheers erupted in the gallery, but Kevin remained still, processing the news. The judge raised her hand for silence. "I must say, Miss Thompson, your actions have not only jeopardized your reputation, but have also revealed a side of you that is unacceptable in our society. You were saved, and instead of showing gratitude, you chose to lash out in a display of ignorance and prejudice." Karen's face turned crimson as she glared at the judge, her anger boiling over. "This court finds your behavior appalling," the judge continued. "Kevin Johnson acted bravely, and he will be celebrated as a hero for his actions. This case is closed." With that, the gavel came down and the courtroom erupted in applause. Kevin felt a surge of relief wash over him. The media quickly descended upon the courtroom, capturing the moment as Kevin stepped outside to cheers and congratulations from his fellow firefighters and community members. But as Karen stormed out, her face twisted in rage, Kevin couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness for her. Her refusal to acknowledge the truth would only lead to more pain and anger in her life. In the days that followed, media outlets flooded social media with stories of Kevin's bravery, while Karen's name became synonymous with racism and entitlement. As he stood in front of the fire station, surrounded by friends and colleagues, Kevin felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had fought not just for his reputation, but for something greater. a chance to challenge the prejudices that had plagued their community for far too long. In the wake of the trial, Kevin felt a mix of vindication and hope. The media buzzed around his name, celebrating his bravery and painting Karen Thompson as a cautionary tale of racism and ignorance. Her attempts to sue the fire department were met with widespread disdain, and as her reputation crumbled, Kevin emerged as a hero. One afternoon, Kevin received a surprise visit from Chief Harris. The chief's expression was serious yet proud. "Kevin," he began, "your bravery has sparked conversations about race and community. I want you to lead a new initiative focused on community engagement and diversity training within the fire department." Kevin's heart raced. "Me? Lead it? Absolutely. Your experience and insight are invaluable," Chief Harris affirmed. "It's time to confront uncomfortable truths and build a better community." Overwhelmed with emotion, Kevin accepted the challenge. He organized workshops that brought together community members of all backgrounds, aiming to foster understanding and healing. After some hesitation, he invited Karen to attend the workshops, believing facing the consequences of her actions could help her find redemption. She reluctantly agreed, and on the day of her first workshop, the atmosphere was thick with tension. "Today, we're talking about humanity," Kevin began. "Karen, thank you for being here. It takes courage to face those you've hurt." As Karen spoke, her voice trembled with remorse. "I've realized that my ignorance caused pain, not just to Kevin, but to everyone who shares his experience. I want to learn and do better." The room was silent, but Kevin remained steady. "It's easy to hate what we don't understand. We can change that together." As the workshop progressed, others began to share their experiences. Kevin encouraged open dialogue, allowing voices that had been silenced by fear to emerge. The atmosphere shifted from hostility to understanding as participants began to connect on a deeper level. Karen slowly opened up about her fears and insecurities, acknowledging the prejudice that had led her to embrace hateful ideologies. The discussions were raw and emotional, but they created a pathway toward healing. In the weeks that followed, the workshops evolved into regular community gatherings, attracting people from diverse backgrounds. Kevin and Karen worked side by side, transforming a painful past into a powerful learning experience. The media soon framed the initiative as a story of redemption and unity, showcasing Kevin's heroism and Karen's willingness to confront her biases. One crisp autumn evening, as Kevin stood outside the community center watching people enter for a workshop, Chief Harris approached him. "Better than I ever imagined," Kevin replied. "People are engaging, and I think we're making a difference." "Absolutely," Chief Harris said. "This is just the beginning. We need to push for more initiatives across the city." As the sun set over the community center, Kevin felt hope swell within him. The journey had just begun, but he knew that together, they could pave the way for understanding and compassion in a world that often felt divided. Karen, too, began to change. Her journey wasn't easy, but she committed herself to learning alongside Kevin. Together, they bridged the divide that had once separated them, proving that even deeply rooted beliefs could be challenged. As they stood together at the community center one night, Kevin turned to Karen. "Thank you for being willing to face this. It's worth it." Karen nodded, her eyes reflecting newfound determination. "I'll keep fighting against my own biases." With a shared sense of purpose, they looked out at the gathering crowd, symbols of unity amid diversity. Their journey had just begun, but they would work together to embrace acceptance, understanding, and love. If you enjoyed this story, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. I put a lot of love and care into telling these important stories, and your support means the world to me. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Have a blessed day.